Another piece of real news from the Commons today is the Prime Minister giving the oligarch Roman Abramovich a final warning to release £2.5 billion from the sale of Chelsea Football Club or have the money seized and converted for the use of a new humanitarian foundation for Ukraine.
Mr. Speaker, I can announce that we're issuing a licence to transfer £2.5 billion from the sale of Chelsea Football Club. That's been frozen, those funds, since 2022. My message to Abramovich is this: the clock is ticking. Honour the commitment that you made and pay up now. And if you don't, we're prepared to go to court so every penny reaches those whose lives have been torn apart by Putin's illegal war.
Now, this is a story with more questions, I think, than answers, but let's get a few of the latter now from Sir Bill Browder, the anti-corruption campaigner and head of the global Magnitsky Justice Campaign. He gave me his reaction to the news.
Well, I don't know. The only thing I don't like about it is that it's not the 90 days. Roman Abramovich made a commitment to the British government more than 3 years ago to hand this money over to Ukraine. I don't know why it hasn't been handed over. I don't know why the government has waited 3 years to issue ultimatums. And it's not clear that what the government is talking about is seizing those assets. They're talking about going to court, which is a whole other thing. And I'm not even sure what the court will decide. I haven't seen the agreements, but I would describe this as way too late. The government should have done this a long time ago. And there's a lot of people in Ukraine that desperately need money and support from this terror that they're being subjected to by Russia.
It is a bizarre situation because there's an indication or suggestion from the government here that the argument with Abramovich is that he wants some of the money spent in Russia, not just in Ukraine, to all the victims of war. In other words, not specifically for Ukrainians who've been suffering so far so much the worst.
Well, that's ridiculous. Russia has launched a war of aggression. Ukrainian civilians are the victim. Ukraine is not attacking Russia, or certainly not attacking civilians or attacking Russian oil refineries, but that's completely and absolutely ridiculous. And he shouldn't be dictating any terms at all. He agreed to this. He agreed to this 3 years ago. My read on the whole thing is that he probably doesn't want to give the money up at all, and just throwing delay tactics in the works so that hopefully, and from his perspective, when the sanctions are lifted, he can get the money back. I would suspect that would be his motivation here.
He is a wily and to a certain extent mysterious character. Do you see him still as effectively an ally of Putin's?
Well, I don't think he can be anything other than an ally of Putin's. If you're in opposition to Putin in Russia, you get arrested, all your money gets taken away, and you get thrown in jail. And so all oligarchs are beholden to Putin. They all pray at the Putin altar, and they do whatever they're told to do. These people are not independent actors. They're dependent actors, and they're dependent on Vladimir Putin.
So on this story, your message would be to the British government: too little, too late, pull your fingers out and get on with it.
Absolutely. The Ukrainians desperately need this money. The money has been sitting there frozen, £2.5 billion. It could do a lot of good for Ukraine. Why did we wait 3 years? Why are we waiting another 90 days? Get onto it.
Can I ask you about a parallel story emerging out of Kiev at the moment, which is very worrying, which is a suggestion from Zelensky, or the people around Zelensky, that the Americans have been putting pressure on the Europeans not to unfreeze the frozen Russian assets and hand them to Ukraine. And that's been something that Putin's been really concerned about, and it's beginning to look as if Trump and Putin on this crucial matter are speaking with one voice.
And you can understand why Trump people are doing this, because if that money gets released and given to Ukraine, then the Americans no longer have any leverage to demand territorial concessions. So right now, the Americans have said, we're not supplying any more financial and military aid to Ukraine. Because of that, Ukraine is lacking resources to continue fighting off the Russians. Because of that, America can make all sorts of unreasonable demands. And if Ukraine gets that money, then all of a sudden Ukraine can make an agreement or not make an agreement on terms that are acceptable to them, because they will have the time to decide when to make an agreement with Putin. And so that's very much not in the interest of Donald Trump and the current U.S. administration because they want to be able to continue to have the leverage to dictate the terms, which at the moment are unreasonable terms.
Whether or not this money is unfrozen is a bit of a race against time. The Belgian government in particular does not want to do this because it's concerned about the Russian reaction. Do you think the Belgians are being intimidated and bullied?
Well, I can't imagine that they aren't. And there was a really disturbing story that came out last week from a small European newspaper called the EU Observer, in which they documented how the head of Euroclear, which is the bank or the custodian organization where the Russian money is held, that this person had been threatened with death from the Russians. And I can't imagine that a similar threat hasn't been made to the Prime Minister of Belgium. And I can imagine that his whole approach is he's actually personally scared for his own life. And so I think that he needs some protection to make this decision. But he needs to make this decision, and he can't be standing in the way, because the downside of Belgium blocking this money is that Ukraine runs out of money, Ukraine defenses crumble, Russia takes over Ukraine, Russia gets all the weapons that we've given them, and then all of a sudden we're dealing with 20 million Ukrainian refugees, and we're now dealing with fighting Russia ourselves, where British young men and women will be killed by Russian soldiers. And so this is really an existential moment for Britain and for the rest of Europe, that this money gets released so that Ukraine can continue fighting on.
The stakes could not be higher. Do you know where all this money originated? I mean, we're talking about vast sums of Russian money. Where did it come from? Who had it originally?
Well, this is the Russian central bank. This is the Russian government. This is the money that they've accumulated from the sale of oil and the sale of minerals and diamonds and other such things. And they've accumulated a very large, what they called a war chest. And they kept some of the money in dollars, some of it in euros, some of it in Swiss francs. And they had it literally as their war chest. They were going to use this money to conduct their war. And then like a week after the war started, Western governments very intelligently froze that money. And since then, the Russian government has done $1 trillion of damage to Ukraine. And we in the West have $300 billion of that money and should be given to Ukraine for whatever purposes they need it for. And right now they need it for defense.
In 4 years of conflict, is this, in your view, one of the absolute pivotal moments we're going to see played out over the next couple of weeks?
I think it is. I think that this is the key. If Ukraine can get this money, they can survive for as long as they need to defeat Russia. If they don't, they will be defeated, and then we'll be fighting Russia.